Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Thursday, October the 9th. This is Let's Talk Tropics. We're going to look at Tropical Storm Jerry and see if there's anything else out there as we start to wind down the hurricane season. We've got about 7 weeks left or so, and really if we can get past the next 3 weeks, usually Louisiana is pretty much in the clear as well as the northern Gulf Coast. But we'll look to see if there's anything else out there, but we have been very fortunate so far this hurricane season. Not once has the Acadiana area been in the cone. And got a question yesterday on when was the last time we didn't have any hurricanes in the Gulf waters. And I went back 2014, 2015, both years. We did not have a hurricane. We had a couple of tropical depressions move across the southern part of the Gulf. And so far, that's what we've seen so far this year is one named storm, I believe, down in the southern part of the Bay of Campeche, and that's really about it. And there's only been a couple of other streaks from what I found. Another time was back in the late 80s, early 90s, which was actually a slower time when it came to the number of tropical systems. We were kind of in that lull, and then we raised back up with the activity in the 90s and the early 2000s, and that's kind of a cyclical thing that goes through over about a 30-year time period. So you got to go back even farther than that to find another one. I think it was back in the late 1920s where we had no hurricanes in the Gulf waters. Again, that's hurricanes. We've had some named storms, some tropical depressions out there, but no hurricanes in the Gulf so far this season, which is similar to what we saw back in 2014 and 2015 because of all the hurricanes we've had in so many years between now and back 10, 11 years ago. Really hard for me to remember those things that we actually had a couple of quiet hurricane seasons in the near past. 83 degrees right now. We've actually got mostly sunny skies here in the hub city. It really is a pretty day. We've got that nice breeze that's currently out of the north at about 15 miles per hour. And dew points are going to drop off too. So it's going to be very comfortable. In fact, those humidity levels will probably run in that 35 to 45% sweet spot a little bit later today. And with those north breezes, it should feel pretty comfortable if you want to hang out on the patio this time around. Gorgeous sunshine out there. Really a pretty day all across the Acadiana region. No worries, no complaints out there, and really along the Gulf Coast things are really nice too as that cold front has passed through from Alabama all the way over to around Cocodrie and then westward over into Texas. We've got beautiful skies out there and some very comfortable conditions. Now, unfortunately, that has caused some rough conditions out here in the offshore waters, which we normally see when we get a cold front to come through. We do have small craft advisories posted out there, at least for the early part of the afternoon. Winds are going to be out of the northeast at about 15 to 20 knots, a little higher in the far offshore waters. Seas will be running about 2 to 3 feet. But you don't have to worry about any rain. Our cold front is way out here, and that's where the rainfall is right now along the mid-Texas coast, but nothing to worry about here, at least locally. And I don't think we're going to be seeing any rain for quite some time. It is pretty dusty here locally. I was working over in Baton Rouge, though, on Monday, and they got dumped on, and then I drive home and really have had nothing. So we're a little bit drier here in the western part of the state, and we're going to stay that way through the weekend and probably for the early part of next week. Big ridge of high pressure in place. Northeasterly winds are coming in behind our frontal boundary, so it is going to continue to stay very, very comfortable. And then at the same time, we've got a big ridge of high pressure that is aloft in the high levels of the atmosphere, so that's really going to prevent any lift. And the upper levels are pretty dry too, so they won't have a whole lot of moisture to tap into. And as you can see, the Gulf water's looking pretty nice. Frontal boundary right about there. So the rougher seas are going to come in behind that. What we were watching yesterday is now pushing back over into the coastline of Mexico. So at this point, any disturbance there over the Bay of Campeche virtually has a zero chance for development. I'm going to watch this area of moisture here as the frontal boundary kind of works its way a little bit farther to the south. We might have a little low develop and then kind of cruise off toward the northeast here as we get into next week. As far as that Bay of Campeche low, though, you can see pretty much this has now made its way on land, and we won't expect any development there. But we're going to continue to see some pretty heavy rains there over parts of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche. Much of Central America really clearing out pretty nicely here, although we've got some thunderstorms with more of a monsoonal trough That's down near Panama and Costa Rica. That's going to keep some heavier rains down there. Got a bit of a tropical wave that's making its way through the western part of the Caribbean. A little tropical wave right there, too. And then, of course, we have Tropical Storm Jerry, which is getting a little bit closer to the Leeward Islands and also the Virgin Island as well. And the rest of the tropical Atlantic, we've got another tropical wave that's coming off the African coast. We'll watch that. And then we got another low that's kind of off the screen here up to the top. The National Hurricane Center is actually watching this for maybe a little bit of development, but it's really going to have to get its act together quickly. But it's more of a cold core low that's up there, and then we've got Jerry that's close to the Leeward Islands. So at this point, we're not expecting anything over the next several days. The week 2 and week 3 does keep the Central American gyre going a little bit more. That's why I think there might be a low developing along that front. And then moving off toward the northeast, and then week 3, keep things a little bit more active there in the western part of the Caribbean as we round out the month of September. Again, lows could develop here, but with a series of troughs that's going to be coming off the North American continent, most of the action should pull off toward the northeast. So we got that low in the North Atlantic. We've got a tropical wave off the African coast and 2 tropical waves that are in the Caribbean. And then, of course, we've got Tropical Storm Jerry that's out there as well. Water temperatures continue to stay very warm and above normal there, especially in the Gulf and the Caribbean. Fortunately, we are not seeing anything coming toward the Gulf waters, which is great news. Most of the action that we're seeing in the models is going to kind of come this way and move off toward the north. Some of the past tropical systems, including Imelda and Umberto, kind of cooling the waters a little bit there over the western part of the Atlantic, but we still got a lot of heat content here, and that's why we're a little more concerned with the western part of the Caribbean. Not only because it is the warmest waters that we have, but also as we get into October and November, that's really one of the more likely areas that we would see tropical storm development and also where systems would track. A lot of times they would track across that area, and with that high heat content, they could become pretty significant systems in a short period of time. Fortunately, Jerry is not going to work its way into the Caribbean. It's going to track off toward the north, and it's kind of in a high wind shear environment right now. So it has been struggling a little bit, and you can see here on the satellite that the center of circulation is right about there, but most of the convection is off toward the southwest. And with that wind shear wreaking havoc on that, it hasn't been able to strengthen a whole lot, which is good news for the northern Leeward Islands. But winds are there about 65 miles per hour, and we now have a tropical storm warning for Barbuda. And then the rest of the northern Leeward Islands are still under a tropical storm watch. Now, will this make landfall in Barbuda? It's going to be pretty close, but I do believe that they're going to see tropical storm force winds and some indirect effects there. So probably a good reason that they've got that tropical storm warning posted. But it is still forecast to become a hurricane, and notice it's going to be slowing its forward movement. It will kind of move past the islands and then lift very slowly north, perhaps as a hurricane. And most of the computer models are kind of on top of each other right here. That's kind of close to where the National Hurricane Center's forecast, but you see there are a couple of models that come a little bit farther toward the west, and that's probably part of the reason why some of those tropical storm watches and warnings have gone up. Now, the good news is the intensity models really do keep this as a low-end hurricane or even tropical storm. There's only a couple of them that run it up to even a Category 3. So as far as the computer models are looking when it comes to the intensity, it doesn't look like it's going to get that strong. It still could become a hurricane, but we're not anticipating this to be a major hurricane, nor a Category 4 or 5 like we've seen already a couple of times this year. So real quick, we'll go over the deterministic models here, and we're going to start with the Euro model. And as you can see down here to the south, Jerry is surrounded by a lot of moisture, but it is dealing with quite a bit of wind shear. But once it gets out of that environment, it should lift fairly quickly to the north. And then, of course, we've got another low that's developing here off Florida. This actually could become what we call a nor'easter as it moves up the coastline of North America. And earlier in the week, we're thinking maybe this was going to be something tropical. But now it looks like this could turn into one of the season's first nor'easters, which is really a good sense that we're starting to transition out of summer and into fall and winter. But we'll watch that low as it continues to move off toward the northeast. Look at all the dry air, though, that comes down here over the Gulf waters. So you're not going to have any tropical systems coming into the Gulf, but where this boundary is right here, you could get a low to, again, just like the previous one, kind of lift off toward the north. So as we get into the mid part of next week, you can see dry air really takes over much of the Gulf. Maybe a little bit of tropical moisture trying to work into the southern part of the Gulf way down the road. But at this point, the Euro is not suggesting anything coming toward the Gulf waters, which is good news. GFS, very similar. You see what would be Tropical Storm or Hurricane Jerry moving off toward the north. There goes that coastal low that could become a nor'easter. And of course, during that period of time, it's going to drag all of that dry air out here over the Gulf, which again will shut business down for there, but can't rule out a low kind of tracking in this direction here sometime next week. We're not seeing that really suggested until about Wednesday of next week. You see that low there over western Cuba. We'll have to see what happens with that. Dry air should keep it down to the south. At least the GFS is a little bit stronger and maybe taking a little bit more of a turn toward the north as we get beyond that 10-day forecast. So again, that's just a trend, and this is kind of far out in the future. This is beyond 10 days. And it's really the only model that I've seen as of late that suggests anything coming in toward the Gulf waters. So that's only one model that we're looking at compared to some of the other models that we've got. But you can see, again, with the Canadian Jerry and a low along the east coast, taking with it most of the moisture and the very dry conditions out over the Gulf. And as we go out to the 10-day period, the Canadian model is not suggesting anything coming into the Gulf waters like the GFS was. And again, we'll have to go back and look at some of the other GFS models and see down the road, maybe tomorrow, if any of those are suggesting something else coming into the Gulf. I've only really seen one model run. So we'll finish off with the Icon, and very similar to the Canadian, everything kind of lifting northward there along the Atlantic coast and out in the Atlantic Ocean. And again, nothing coming into the Gulf waters. So that's a great forecast here for the next several days. We go out 10 days. That's going to take us out to the 19th of October. And if we can finish the month of October, we're usually pretty safe as we get into November. As you can see, the amount of activity really does start to drop off about halfway through October. And then by the time we reach the end of November, we have about the same amount of activity as what we would see in July. And July is usually a pretty quiet month. The only other reason why we stay a little more on guard during the month of October is because a lot of our tropical systems that develop and track start out in the western part of the Caribbean or the southeastern part of the Gulf waters. Most of them, especially toward the end of October and November, shoot off toward the northeast away from the western or northern Gulf Coast. But because of the development zone being a little bit closer to home, we do try to stay on guard at least through the remainder of October, and then kind of relax a little bit more as we get into the month of November. So no threats for the next couple of days, no threats for the weekend either, and we'll keep an eye on anything that might spin out of the Central American gyre as we go into the middle part of next week. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. If you do like this video, subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications. And don't forget you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And this weekend, I'll be over at WBRZ. We've got a show at 10 a.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. on Sunday, and I'll be there from 5 to 9 and the noon show on Monday. And if you can't catch us on TV, I've got a link in the description below. If you want to click that, you can watch our live stream. I'd really appreciate the visit. And of course, for any updates on Jerry or anything else that might come around over the course of the weekend, please follow my social media pages on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. About to head out. Going to go over to John Paul the Great. Going to talk to Mr. Scott Artigue's class here in just a little bit. You talk about weather. Take the class outside on a beautiful day. Gorgeous campus over there at John Paul the Great. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube.